Hey friends, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish, here with another episode of Sly Flourish's Lazy GM Prep. In this weekly show, I go through steps from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master while preparing for my Sunday role-playing game. In this case, we are coming to the end of my Shadowdark campaign. I have been running a awesome campaign in using the RPG Shadowdark by Arcane Library, set in the Gloaming, which is the setting from Cursed Scroll 1, also available from the Arcane Library. This show, like all of the work of Sly Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to all kinds of exclusive adventures, source books, tools, tips, tricks, online tools to help you run your game. They get to join the awesome Lazy DM community over on the Discord server, and they help me put on shows like this. To the patrons of Sly Flourish, thank you so much for your outstanding support. I believe today is going to be the penultimate session of my Shadowdark game. We are getting right to the super tippy point of the yam-shaped adventure with lots of different directions that they can go, narrowing down to very few directions that they can go. I had a patron ask me a question about that. He said, they said, hey, I know that you have like a yam-shaped design where you kind of have a clear start for your campaign. You have, and then it sort of widens out, and then the characters can kind of do lots of different things while still kind of moving generally forward, like the outside of the yam, right? And then as you get closer to the end, it tapers back down again and narrows down until you have kind of this big final conclusion. One of the things that I did with the Gloaming campaign is I had a couple of other potential conclusions. So one of them was, hey, the Gloaming is dead and you're not going to be able to stop it. And maybe you should just collect artifacts and then bring them to Titania, the Witch Queen, or the Queen of the Fae, and use it as passage to go to the realm of the Fae. And that was always, and the characters brought up, like, maybe we just get out of here. Like, this is really terrible. Like, we got people hunting us down, and the Muggle Blub in the sky has a giant jaws that are chewing on the thing. Like, it's getting really, really bad. So maybe we should just leave. And then they're like, nah, we got to give it a shot. Like, let's try. And so they've been doing that. They've been taking the harder course. But I did have some kind of alternative conclusions to this, which is mostly them leaving worlds. I think at one point, I mean, they had opportunities to just literally leave the world, where they could pierce open and open a dimensional portal to another world and step through, and then they'd be in another world. I was actually considering jumping to one of the other cursed scrolls and then have them basically restart in a whole new world, which would have been really fun and interesting. So they had those opportunities, but now things have really narrowed down. So in our last session of the game, the characters met with Haldren. Haldren is the husband of Gwendolyn. So Haldren was the wife, or the husband of Gwendolyn, who was mother. The two of them were the mother and father of Morrigan, who was one of the main characters, one of the longest surviving characters in it. Morrigan was disintegrated upon the tip of an enervating blade wielded by a demon after refusing to give up the obsidian witch knife, one of the three things, which drove Haldren bananas. He was completely destroyed when he saw he tried to keep his daughter safe. He did all of these things to try to keep her safe. And then she makes it all the way to him, and before they can even talk, she's killed in front of him. He was trapped inside of a big soul vessel as a soul. The characters drew him out of the soul vessel and told him, hey, you've got more work to do. Like, you can't just leave. You can't, he said, just destroy me, please. And they said, no, you've got more work you need to do. So they used like dark magic and drew him out and ended up reforming him as a lich. So now he's a lich. But as soon as he became a lich, he kind of lost his soul. And he didn't know. He's like, I remember being in love with my wife. I remember loving my daughter. I remember wanting to save this world. And now I have no idea why. Like, I don't remember that. I know that I remember that, but I don't have those feelings anymore. Those feelings are gone. He left. He said, meet me at the tower. But he still had like the remnants of his former self were still around. So he said, meet me at my tower. It's on the lake. So they go to the lake. They find that the whole lake has been drained because they had done something else with another artifact earlier that sort of cracked the world and it drained all the water out of the lake. And now there's like a primordial ooze at the bottom of the lake. And they made their way to the lake, got involved in shenanigans and adventures along the way, and made it to the tower. They navigated the tower and found it filled with all kinds of like old artifacts of his, and there was a magic-eating Atiag at the bottom, and then they faced an Oni who was kind of his librarian, and they fought the Oni, and they defeated the Oni, who then surrendered and explained to them that, the Haldren who came back is not the Haldren who left here. He's different. And so they're like, well, we still need to go up there because they need to get the third artifact that they require from Haldurin. And so there were 3 artifacts that they needed. They learned this early on, and they knew that Haldurin and Gwendolyn were seeking these things out before and failed to get all 3. And that was the Obsidian Witch Knife, which Gwendolyn had, the Sphere of Annihilation, which Haldurin had tried to get from a Temple of Ramlot, a big demon temple of Ramlot down in the Underdark, and the Well of Worlds. And he had the Well of Worlds already. So Haldurin had the Well of Worlds, Gwendolyn had the knife, and Haldurin had said, I'm going to go down. I'm going to leave the Well of Worlds back on my tower, so I don't, give it up. But I'm going to go down and try to get the Sphere of Annihilation. And that's when he was killed, and his soul trapped in a soul vessel down in this demon temple. And that's when the characters found him. So at that point, the characters had the Sphere of Annihilation. They had the Obsidian Witch Knife, and they made their way to Haldurin. And they met Haldurin and had a conversation. And Haldurin told them, like, I don't know that I care anymore. And and I was playing from a GM standpoint. I was playing it like, this conversation could go really good or really bad. And if it goes really bad, they're going to be fighting a lich, and it's going to be really hard. If it goes well, then he'll probably do what they want. And the conversation went well. They explained the situation. They said, like, we know you don't feel this way now, but trust me, you did. And you did love your daughter, and you did love your wife. And if there's any remnant left in you that remembers them, even if you don't feel the same way, do you really want the world destroyed? And he's like, well, maybe it should be. Like, maybe this world deserves to die, and maybe we should just leave, and maybe I should just leave. And they're like, no, like, we can do more. And so they talked to him, and they convinced him. And he said, all right, I'm not helping you further, but you can have the Well of Worlds, and we'll see what you manage to accomplish. He goes, because the alternative is you're going to take all 3 artifacts to the god who wants all 3 artifacts. And if he gets them, he's going to not just destroy this world, he's going to destroy every world. Right, because if they give 2 of the 3 artifacts, the Obsidian Witch Knife and the Well of Worlds, if they give those to Muggleblob, he can use those to invade every world. The slime god can invade every world. So, but they also have the Sphere of Annihilation. So they convinced him, and we ended the session with them going to the top of the tower, peering down into this hole that was going through the world. That he gave them a special glove that they could essentially grab the surface of it and whip it up and turn it into like a ball of cloth, and then carry this around with all of their stuff. And so our session begins with them at the top of the tower, holding the Well of Worlds in their hands. So we're going to generate a new session planning template. I am using Notion for our campaign planning today. I will probably not be using Notion for my next campaign. I'm going to switch over to Obsidian just because I'm digging Obsidian, but we're still going to be doing this here. And for some reason, I still have the old characters listed in this. I never bothered to update the characters. Let's see if I can get did I up them here? So I know we have Dazder and Calum and Uralt and Scree. So those are the 4 characters today. Dazder, Calum, Uralt, and Scree is I think a kobold fighter. Arena is not here. Yes. So this is we have 4 players today. 4 players, 4 characters. 3 of whom have lived for a long time. Calum, Dazder, and Uralt have lived for a long time. Scree is the replacement character for Morgan and is still around as well. So that's cool. And they begin, so the Well of Worlds, all 3 artifacts are now in hand. And it's time to head back to Bittermold Keep to face Muggleblob. So one of the things we need to do today is kind of so this is like I said, this is the penultimate session. We've got this session and next session. And actually I have one tricky bit, which I've got to noodle through, which is attendance for the final session. Attendance has been spotty for the last one. Last week we didn't have a game because we had I think 3 or 4 players out last week. And it's been pretty rare during the summer and early part of the fall where I've been able to get everybody. And so what do we do for that final one? And I'll probably just ask the group, like, hey, what do we want to do to try to maximize attendance for this? I think it's going to be next week. And, I think my plan is to basically say, hey, if can everybody make it on one of the next 2 weekends? And if they can, then that's the weekend we will go. If they can't, then we're going to go with as many players as we can. And somebody might miss it, right? And I hate to have somebody miss it, but we can still have sort of they can still have their 1 year later. They can still learn what happened during the event. So hopefully they'll still be kind of included. But people have been busy, a lot of people out of town. And normally we just roll. Like today, we're just going to go. Even though we're missing two of the 6 players are out, we're going to keep going anyway. I would probably even go if we only had 3. But today is not a super important session, but next one is, because next one they're probably gonna face it. I think a wyvern flies. They already dealt with a wyvern, I think. They already dealt with a wyvern, and they were crawling around the outside of the temple, and it kind of smashed against the door. And they sent, I think they conjured something. I'm trying to remember. It was a couple weeks back. One of the characters, they freed an Erinese. That's right. There was an Erinese that was trapped below. The Erinese told them a bunch of stuff. They freed the Erinese, who was like, hey, I can't believe you freed me. And it said, well, I'm getting out of here. And it opened the door, and there was a wyvern smashing against the door, and it just went out and butchered the wyvern. So an interesting thing they could see is the Erinese kills the wyvern, right? And like a huge, severed body lands on top of the tower. That's kind of fun. So scenes are leaving Haldren's Tower, beginning their journey back to Mugdalblub, back to Bittermold Keep. And then we have some loose ends. So I want to keep track of some loose ends to decide if any of them should come into play on their way back. So we have the remaining Knights of Mugdalblub, which are a druid and a mage, I think, are the two Knights of Mugdalblub that are left. We have Titania and her Fey artifact hunters. We have the refugees of the town. What was the name of the town? Curse scroll one here. I forget it. Wardenwood. The refugees of Wardenwood. Another loose end. We'll get rid of the plural on here. Another loose end is the exodus of Aklaklik, the goblin. Another loose end is St. Yidris and their knights, their corrupt knights. Is there any other? Let's take a look. We have and so another loose end is Almazatz and Kytheros. Right. So these are all, when we think about we don't have to tie off every single one of these. Like the criticality of some of this isn't important. To meeting Titania and the artifact hunters doesn't really matter. Few of these matter. I think the Almazat and Kytheros matter because they have to convince Almazatz not to devour the world if they manage to destroy Mugdalblub. So there's a few different loose ends here, and I think we can kind of almost turn these into sort of like random encounters along the way and decide like which ones happen here. So we can fill this out. One of the tricks I have is it's a travel. Today is basically like a travel adventure. I want to make it fun and interesting, and I want it to matter, but I also don't want to just rush them straight to Bittermold Keep and that's the end, like they're at Bittermold Keep. But I really want to kind of pace things. And so I need to build in some controls. I want to pace things so that the characters are basically at the conclusion of the campaign at the next session. So I don't think I want to have another big dungeon crawl. I think when they get to Bittermold Keep, I want them I want them basically at the end, right? And that once they get there, they know what to do, and the next session will be dealing with that. So I can kind of think about what is that end? And we could have, so I don't think they're actually going to fight Mugdalblub at the end. I mean, they could maybe, but I think that who are the final guardians of Mugdalblub? And maybe we'll move the remaining Knights of Mugdalblub, who are two big spellcaster types, plus a bunch of Mugdalblub conscripts, which are new Knights of Mugdalblub. Maybe even some people the characters know. That'd be kind of fun. And kind of stage it. So what do I know is the conclusion at the end of this session that will lead us into the final conclusion for the campaign. And then there's a question is this the Shadowdark way? And it's maybe not, but it's kind of the way I'm going to do it, right? That I want to have a big final battle. I want to have a big final conclusion. And and it will be more of the Baldur's Gate 3 style giant epic thing rather than we roll random tables until the game is up. So if I think about what that final scene is, the final scene could be the last Knights of Mugdalblub plus conscripts. And my thought is at this point, Mugdalblub has probably devoured all of Bittermold Keep. So like Bittermold Keep is now no longer there. And now when they go there, they go to the top of the hill and it's like a crater. And at the bottom of the crater is a massive Muggle-blub that has devoured, they can see like ruined towers and rock walls and stuff like that have been all kind of disintegrated and chewed up. But really it's just Muggle-blub at this thing. And it's titanic in scope. Hey, my mom is here. Hello, Mom. So I think that, and then so we could kind of end at this last battle. Like they are, the knights, and one aspect, this could be a fun secret, is that the more humanoid knights of Muggle-blub recognize deception, even though Muggle-blub does not. I think that's a secret. Another secret is the way to use the 3 artifacts includes laying down the Well of Worlds, piercing it with the obsidian witch knife, which opens it up, which tears it open to all worlds, baiting Muggle-blub into the well so it connects with all of its instantiations across all worlds, and then hitting it with the Sphere of Annihilation. I can't spell annihilation. There we go. If this is done incorrectly, 2 bad outcomes could occur. 1, this is the worst, this is the longest secret of all time. We're going to make this a separate secret. If this is done incorrectly, 2 bad outcomes could run. Muggle-blub takes over all worlds. 2, the Sphere of Annihilation destroys all possible worlds. Right, because you're sending a Sphere of Annihilation into a torn Well of Worlds, which thus could disintegrate all possible worlds in all places and destroy all of existence. So both of those things, I think that's an important thing. So Saint Yidris walks the lands, seeking to purify all living souls before the end. That's cool. Let's see. Titania's artifact hunters seek the final and most powerful artifacts to gain passage to the realm of the Fae. The refugees of Wardenwood, what's been going on with them, managed to survive all this time, not being devoured by either the marrow wolves of Almazats or the folk of Muggle-blub. We have another loose end. Where is Crisper? I think Crisper is probably with the refugees of Wardenwood. Why don't we get 2 groups together, right? The refugees of Wardenwood found, what did they do? Met up with the folk of Wardenwood, with the folk of Aklaklik. They now travel with Crisper, the Muggle-blub curing gelatinous cube. That's cool. Because that could be like a third alternative. Like, what if you send Crisper into it instead of the Sphere of Annihilation? It could actually be safer. So that could be something. What else we got? The remaining Knights of Muggle-blub. They probably have figured out that the characters are on their way back to Muggle-blub. So they probably returned back to Muggle. The remaining Knights of Muggle-blub have returned to Bittermold Keep. They know the characters are coming. Any other loose ends? So how can the characters communicate with Almazats and Kytheros? Met Almazats before. They met Undaluk, but they need to speak to... So let's see. We could have Undaluk stalks the characters, but does not attack. It's curious about their resilience and their goal. Maybe Undaluk isn't such a bad guy after all. Undaluk is a giant 6-eyed wolf. They defeated it, they sent it to another world, it came back again, and it leads the Marrow Wolves. So maybe speaking to Undaluk is the way to speak to Almazats and Kytheros. And really, it just has to speak to Kytheros. Beyond obliterating Muggle-blub, the characters must still convince Kytheros to call off Almazats from devouring the world. There is in this area, there is a shrine. There's a stone circle, 807. Let's get our map up here. We should have a map. So 807 is way down here. I think I'm going to flip 807 and 1002. There's also some fun werewolves to meet them on the way in 1003. But 1002 could be, I think 102 looks like a standing stone, but I think we can actually have an altar to Kytheros there. 807 is a stone circle. 1 minute of time passes inside this low circle is actually an hour on the outside. Kytheros grants a random patron boon to those who lay the six-eyed wolf inside the slain six-eyed wolf in the circle. Well, that's kind of funny because the six-eyed wolf works for him. I wonder why I would care. But I think we're going to change that so that there is an altar to Kytheros east of Bittermold Keep. And it's hex-wise, it is 2 full hexes away. And I forget how we determined east of Bittermold Keep. So there's that new Shadowdark preview. Let's see if I can find that, because that had new hex rules in it, right? Yes. This is a new preview of Curse Scroll 4 that Kelsey put out, and it has new hex crawl rules in it. And what did we determine? So we have like points of interest and stuff like that. So hexes are 6 miles across. You can cross 4 hexes a day. So it's about a half a day's journey. It's about a half a day's journey to the east. A set of ancient standing stones where time slips backward. No, it doesn't slip backward. The fact that time slows there could be very interesting. This would be a good way, a good place to speak to Kytheros. What is it called? Not speaking. It's like when you talk to a divine entity, there's a name for that. Commune with, that's the word. Okay. Lots of secrets. So if we're thinking about our loose ends, do I have like secrets connected to all the loose ends? Remaining Knights are Mugglebub? Yes, they're waiting outside. Titania and our Fey artifact hunters, sure, they're around. Refugees of Wardenwood, they now have CRISPR and they're wandering around. The Exodus of Alaklik, yeah, we said that the goblins made their way. They actually used artifacts and made their way through, and they are now living in the realm of the Fae with Titania. St. Yidris and their corrupt knights are still walking around. Almazotz and Kytheros, we have some stuff there. CRISPR, we've decided, is with the refugees of Wardenwood. And we know where we want our final scene to be, that when they arrive at Bittermold Keep, to find that Bittermold Keep has now become a giant crater. So that's a secret, right? We put that in here. Mugglebub devoured all of Bittermold Keep and turned the whole area into a giant crater. Cool. Some fantastic locations. So we probably want to have, let's see, let's take a look at our map here. This is really the region that we care about. So they're at the tower now. They can go back across the lake and then follow the shore. If they follow the shore, they'll end up at 1003. And 1003 is where the Bone Cave. Oh, and I think I changed this too. Oh, yeah, werewolf. Victoria the werewolf. So what's her deal? So she and a bunch of other werewolves, we could put a secret in for them. So Victoria and the other werewolves have been left alone by both Mugglebub Undalook, and what else have they been left alone by? Oh, and Titania. Their licking bans them from entry into the realm of the Fae. The werewolves have accepted their eventual death, but hunt the knights, not the Knights of Mugglebub, but they hunt the Knights of St. Yidris, who has killed so many of them. So we have a fun NPC interaction there with Victoria the werewolf, and that's at the Werewolf Cave. I'm moving that around a little bit, I think. No, it's true. Like that. If we look in the book here, the Bone Cave, it's called. Victoria lost her 2 cubs to the swamp dragon, Drusilla, coaxing the grieving Victoria into a plot to turn the children of Wardenwood Village into her new pack of werewolf cubs. Yeah, but boy, things have changed since then. So we have the Bone Cave, the Standing Stones of Kytheros are 2 locations along the way. And we have Mugglebub. We have the ruins of Bittermold Keep. That's there. I like the idea. So let's see. One other thing. Huge severed head lands on the body. Something horrible rises out of the primordial ooze at the bottom of the lake. A sphere with 10 eyes burning the lands around it. So what is that, you might ask? It is a 10-eyed oracle. Where's your monsters? And there was only one of these things. Level 18. Yeah, I think this is like we're going to use this as sort of a only damage by magical sources. Hostile spells targeting the eye are DC 18 to cast. Each ray can shoot once per round at a target. They'll probably need to run from this thing. DC 15 counter drop to 0 with a death timer of 1. Woo! Disintegrate. 5d8 damage or disintegrate it. It doesn't look actually that terrible. Oh, the attack is 2d4 eye stalks. So you roll to see how many eye stalks it fires off. Oh, that's terrible. Wow. I think I might change that to be 1d4. It only flies near, so it could be far away, and they could probably the characters would be like, let's just what the hell. But I might tell them that defeating such a thing would result in 20 experience points. That might be kind of a fun, strong start. Seeing one of those things. It's our last chance. Let's see. Monsters we're going to generally roll randomly. I don't think I need to have a list for that. Treasure we're also going to roll randomly, so I don't need to have a section for that, I don't think. I do want to have, some NPCs to keep track of here. I want to pull some old friends up. Matilda Bauer is still around. She is the elder of Wardenwood. Of course. Blub, eating, gelatinous cube. Curing, right? Muggle-blub curing. Cool. What else do I need? So does that give me enough? I have all these loose ends, but what I really need, so we have a 3-hour game. I'd like to have 5 scenes, right? I'd like to, have like 5 clear things that they could potentially do instead of just rolling. Cause I don't want them to get there and they all came over to my house and we spent an hour and they're already at the end, right? Oh, thanks. We're going to save it for next time. So I want to make sure there's enough stuff going on here to fill out a full session. And then I want to be able to turn the dials on it. So I want to have a number of scenes that could potentially happen. I could always make them random scenes. So one scene is meeting Victoria and the werewolves. Another potential scene could be another scene could be meeting the refugees of Wardenwood. We have, of course, our starting scene, but I don't think it's going to take too long, witnessing the 10-eyed oracle. I even have a cool mini I'll pull out. So let's see. Communing. I don't know if they'll choose this, but communing with Kytheros at the Standing Stones. A dialogue with Undaluk could be another path. The Fey artifact hunters could be another one. Is there any, so I think let's see. And then we know that these guys are the final ones. We just talked about those, the Fey artifact hunters. We have meeting the refugees of Wardenwood and CRISPR. We figured out the Aklak, St. Yidris is on our list, and Kytheros is meeting. So we have several scenes here. Is that enough? So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 scenes. We're probably going to run 5 of them, depending on what the characters do. Is there any other? I mean, we can always roll random scenes as well, and other things that they might run into while they're making their way. But let's see, if they can cross 4 hexes a day, half a day gets them to the cave, and then another, so they're only about a day away from Muggle-blub. I might extend that and say hey, it's getting harder, and they're probably gonna have to rest somewhere along the way. So then we could roll some random encounters in there as well. That could be a good time. Why don't I turn some of these into a random roll? So I think we're going to have the 10-eyed oracle is going to be a normal one. But we can do, instead of monsters, we'll just do encounters. And let's see. So we have St. Yidris as an encounter. We have Mugglefolk is another. We have Marrowfolk is another. Werewolves is another. Refugees is another. Artifact hunters is another. What do we have any others here? Artifact hunters. That, right? Is there any other? We can always say other random monsters. We can kind of roll on both tables and figure out but I don't need to make that a list. So I've got this sort of encounter list. And let's see, in that new hex chart, there is points of interest, but they're not really filled out yet. So I'm probably going to use my own point of interest generators from the Lazy DM's Companion or the random generator available to... ooh, look at this, a fairy foggy charnel pit. Let's do some random locations. So these are part of the Lazy DM random generator, which is a feature for Patreon, Sly Flourish Patreon backers. And I use it all the time. So we're gonna do a handful of these. A temporal ruby crater. That sounds fun. A defiled foggy stone circle. Can't go wrong with that. See how great these are? Unhallowed glowing throne. That would be for St. Yidris. Could have that. Lightning-touched unhallowed obelisk. Sounds kind of fun. Psionic cyclopean planar rift. Ooh. I like the word cyclopean. So those are fun. We can make these a random list too, if I want to roll on those. So that gives me kind of interesting locations that the characters could find as they're journeying along the way. And then I can sort of roll on the list to mix things up. And in fact, on the encounter list, I can even roll like one of these encounters plus one of the encounters going on, in the Shadowdark book itself. So for example, I'll get my dice. Let's see. There is woods. Let's see. Deep tones are forests, right? So we have forest encounters here, which is a D100. Let me get my dice. I'm missing a die. There it is. And I need a D20. So I can take a forest encounter and I can roll, and I get 87. So 87 is 1d4 cave creepers charge out of a cave reeking of sulfur. And then I can mix that. I'll roll a d6 and I roll a 1, which means they come to like a cave where a bunch of dead cave creepers are there. And sitting on a rock nearby is a sort of angelic figure. And it turns and it looks at them, and it's St. Yidris, like out hunting in the woods. And maybe there's a couple of dead knights of St. Yidris around who got killed by the cave creepers. And so now I'm mixing up multiple encounters to kind of say, well, there would have been cave creepers here, but St. Yidris showed up before you guys did. So now they can deal with that. There's also a lot of different ways for these encounters to go. Like they could have a conversation with St. Yidris, or they could fight St. Yidris. If they fight St. Yidris is in fact... One thing is like, boy, Shadowdark, and Shadowdark is swingy anyway, but it's really swingy, even at high levels. So I think St. Yidris is an archangel. It doesn't, let's see. It could be a Dominie instead of an archangel. Like the archangel is AC 18, 76 hit points, 3 sword attacks, 10 to hit, 2d12 damage. DC 18 to Crown of Fire. Hostile spells targeting the archangel are extreme. I could turn it into a Principi, which is 53, only a mere level 11. More reasonable, right? That St. Yidris is a Principi angel. More decent armor class, 53 hit points, 3 silver bastard sword attacks, plus 9, 1d10 each, can fly near. I think that would be pretty cool. So I think that's what we're going to use, 195. I got that wrong, 195. Yeah, so I got a big pile of locations. I've got a pile of potential encounters. I, of course, have encounters in the book. I know that I can use as many encounters as I need to, and I can watch the time to make sure that the players are having a good time. There's only 4, which means things move fast. So I may need even more scenes, but as they're making their way, they're learning things, they're talking to people who have good roleplay scenes, good exploration scenes, and then in the end, they're going to come to Bittermold Keep, find out that it's a giant crater, and they're going to see the knights and the conscripts of Bittermold Keep standing there waiting to meet them. And that will lead into the final conclusion of the campaign the following week. So I think that narrows down the tippy point of the Yam Shape adventure. I do feel like I have enough material here, and I can fall back on the stuff that I have in my various books if I need to fill it out anymore. What I'm most worried about, and maybe this is what I'm most worried about is not having enough interesting things to fill out an entire session today before they come to the final conclusion. So I went a little overboard, and I would rather be overboard because I can always cut stuff, right? But it's hard to make up stuff on the fly. It's much easier to cut stuff when I don't need it. So I feel like I've got what I need for today's adventure. Friends, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, the best way to find all of the information that I do is to subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. You can find a link down in the show notes. It's absolutely free to sign up. You get a free adventure generators for signing up. It helps you build things like those monuments that I was showing earlier. And you get a weekly RPG related article. Monday's article is going to be how to use Shadowdark with Ravenloft, which actually just came out. If you're watching this on YouTube or the Patreon on Friday after I publish it, then the article is already available on Sly Flourish, but you get more articles like that by signing up for the newsletter. You can also support me directly on Patreon, get access to things like the Lazy GM random tool, also access to the awesome Sly Flourish Lazy DM community over on Discord, and you help me directly by help me put it on shows like this. And you can pick up any of my books, including Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master, the Lazy DM's Workbook, the Lazy DM's Companion, Forge of Foes, and others at the Sly Flourish bookstore. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.